Cowboy Chronicles, the Oklahoman's Oklahoma State podcast. I am your host, Scott Wright, joined this week by Joe Mussatto. Joe, thank you very much for coming to Stone Cloud here and joining me.
I've been wanting to do this for a very long time. It's my honor, and let's have some fun.
Well, for all the regular listeners and viewers, Jacob is out this week. He'll be back. Everything's fine. He says it's a health issue. I'm pretty sure he's just preparing himself mentally and emotionally for the Rangers Game 7 tonight against the Astros.
He's extremely nervous. He doesn't want anything else to sort of get in the way of his thoughts right now. So,
exactly.
Yeah, he's got to prepare. Big game.
Fairly certain that's he might be on his way to Houston right now for the game. I have no idea. All right, Joe. Well, as always, we begin this discussing what we're drinking here from Stone Cloud. This is your first time at this Stone Cloud. Have you been to the other Stone Cloud in Oklahoma City before?
I've actually not been to their tap room.
Yeah.
But another plug for Stone Cloud. When I got married last year, we had all Stone Cloud beers. So I'm a big Stone Cloud guy. I am drinking the Fest beer.
Very nice.
'Tis the season.
Right.
So yeah, it's very, very tasty.
Good deal. I went with the Sunshine Saison in honor of Jacob not being here. He's a big fan of Saisons.
That's nice of you. Good beat partner.
Exactly. Yeah. And he'll probably be. I'm sure I've got him trying to reach out to me right now, trying to make sure I get him some before I leave to take it back with him. I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Oklahoma State Cowboys newsletter at Oklahoman.com. We got some interesting stuff. Jacob will be helping me out with that this week. We will talk about some unheralded players that have been really key to this turnaround. Remind you, if you're watching on YouTube, go into the comments and drop your prediction for Oklahoma State Cincinnati, where you can win a beer that we will drink for you on the next show. This week's winner, 3 weeks in a row for Go Pokes 1983.
Wow.
A 3-time winner. He had Oklahoma State winning 34-24, which was the closest of the predictions in the comments this week. So,
well done.
So this is for Go Pokes 1983. All right, Joe. We got a lot to get into. This was your first Mike Gundy press conference. So, like the weekly press conference, the Monday press conference. You've been to some post games, but just before we go back into last week's game and look ahead to Cincinnati. Your thoughts on today with Mike Gundy?
Very entertaining.
Yes.
As you're certainly used to with Mike Gundy's Monday press conferences. First one for me, Mike, as everyone knows, is very entertaining, but you can also learn some things, and he's pretty open with what he says and everything like that. I would say the theme of the day, as expected, was Ollie Gordon.
Absolutely.
Tons of questions about Ollie Gordon. We asked a couple, finding out more about, not only what he does on the field, but kind of his personality off the field. And, he's put together 3 just extremely impressive games. And Mike talked a lot about that today. Yeah,
he did. And, we'll get into some of the details of the game.
Yeah.
I was flying solo in West Virginia, didn't get a chance to do a post-game podcast for our regular listeners. I apologize for that, but we'll get into some of those details here. But back to your initial point about Gundy, it's always entertaining. You never know what direction things are going to go. He's not just this stiff robot with like a suit and ascot standing at the microphone, just regurgitating coach speak.
Right.
He'll go to his fair share of coach speak from time to time, but he delivers it in an entertaining way, and he takes things in completely unexpected directions. He didn't get too crazy with, sometimes he gets out from behind the microphone, starts demonstrating things and doing different stuff like that. You didn't get to see any of that really today.
I'm going to have to come back, though.
Oh,
I'm going to have to come back. There's always something, and I thought one of the funniest parts of today is he's sort of walking off. Garen Emig asked him a question about kind of about Bedlam or Bedlam looming in 2 weeks, and Gundy, I don't even want to say pretended, but seemed to actually not know that the Cowboys and Sooners will play a week from Saturday. He was like, I thought we were going to UCF, but no, he had to be reminded that Bedlam is indeed a week from Saturday. And again, I don't know if it's just talk, but I genuinely believed Mike Gundy. He seems like he is just focused on what is in front of him.
Yeah, and listen, it's well known that Mike Gundy is not afraid of lying to the media, but this did not feel like one of those moments.
He seemed surprised.
Yeah, he genuinely seemed to feel that way. So very interesting stuff. As you mentioned, Ollie Gordon was, of course, the story of the game and of today's press conference. Gundy revealed some interesting things. There's a little short chat that he has with some of the reporters, not the entire group. No video cameras there. He talked to us afterwards and discussed some of the things that they've taken out of the offense. The run-pass option has really been reduced in what they're doing now. And he said that does a couple of things. For one, rather than Ollie going, say he's lined up to the left of Alan Bowman, he's coming across to the right for the potential handoff or fake handoff while Bowman is reading the defense. Instead of coming across, he's going directly at the line of scrimmage, and he's a downhill runner, much more effective when he's just taking off and getting upfield. So that's an important fact. And also, it takes out the read part for Alan Bowman, which it's not that Bowman struggles with the read, but it's one more thing that he has to think about, and it delays the play that much longer. So it's that little amount of time less that Gordon is getting going toward the line of scrimmage, getting up to full speed, and that seems to really benefit this offense because of the way that he runs. There were so many plays on Saturday where he's going straight at the line of scrimmage, going right up the middle, and then he makes somebody miss, makes a cut, gets outside. I was most fascinated by his first touchdown in the fourth quarter. It was a 16-yard run. He gets up the middle, gains a few yards, and then does almost a 90-degree angle out to the boundary and gets around the corner for the touchdown. His vision and his elusiveness are two things that we've really learned about this guy, particularly when he gets past the first level. I know you got to see a decent bit of his damage. That fourth quarter was it's one of the most impressive single quarters from a player that I've ever seen.
Yeah, you sort of sit back and just marvel at what he does and sort of what he's become as a runner. And I think it's a really good point, kind of you talking about how they're using him maybe in different ways. They want him to get downhill. He's a big physical back, but as Mike Gundy said, and you just said now, he's showing to be more elusive than maybe we thought he was. Another key of today was Mike Gundy talking about, OSU taking, I think he said like 30% out of the playbook and simplifying things. So they're not only simplifying things offensively, but they're catering to kind of what their personnel does best. And they have really seemed to find something. And, maybe it's not the most confusing attack, but man, it's been hard to defend just with how physical they've been playing. The improvements they've made up front with the offensive line. Gundy said today that he's even surprised himself where they've come here in the last few weeks after struggling earlier this season.
Yeah, it's really crazy. I've never seen an in-season turnaround like this from a team really at any level. I mean, Jacob and I were sitting here on the show after the Iowa State game trying to decipher how this team was even going to get to 6 wins and go to a bowl game. And now 3 weeks later, they're 1 win away from that mark, and they've got some of their easiest games still left on the schedule. So it's really kind of mind-blowing where they've I was already looking at like a trip after Christmas because I'm like, I'm going to have all this free time in December.
You're going to have to work a little more now.
Right, exactly. It's an extra 15 practices and a game to cover.
I keep going back to that Iowa State game because I remember looking at it like, man, whoever loses this might be the worst team in the Big 12 or 13th if you want to put Houston in that last spot. And now, behind OU and Texas, you have, I did my tiers column this morning. I've got OSU and Iowa State in that second tier. Both is, competing for spots and still alive in the Big 12 championship race, which is just crazy.
It really is.
That one of those teams could be in Arlington. Iowa State actually controls their own destiny. OSU doesn't, but still, even to be at this point in conference play where, they're, one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the Big 12 is just remarkable.
It really is crazy. I vote in a Big 12 power poll that includes one beat writer covering each team around the conference. We all vote each week, and Oklahoma State fell to number 13 in the poll. They had Houston below them, and that was 3 weeks ago. And this week's has not been compiled yet. I've turned in my vote, and I had Oklahoma State third in mine.
Yeah.
I think you can make an argument for a couple other teams. Iowa State obviously has the head-to-head win over Oklahoma State. Kansas State, even though they've lost to Oklahoma State, you can still make an argument because they do have a really solid resume at this point. But like I said, I got Oklahoma State third in that poll, and we'll see as it comes out. It'll be published on Wednesday where they fall. They could have jumped 10 spots in a 14-team poll over
a short amount of time
of 3 weeks.
Yeah, you can definitely make the argument that they're third. I wouldn't push back against that whatsoever, especially looking at the quality of the wins, like beating Kansas State, and on the road at West Virginia. All three of those teams are top half Big 12 teams, and no matter how bad the conference might seem, you're still at least beating some of the best teams in the conference. So, and this one this weekend is certainly winnable as well. So, yeah, they're rolling, and I feel like we still have half the season to play, and it's already been a roller coaster.
It absolutely has. It really has. It felt like it was heading for the worst season we've seen, and now it already feels like the most impressive turnaround.
Yeah.
We've talked multiple times about this on the show, but the difference in this offensive line now compared to what they were against South Alabama, and you alluded to some of the stuff they've taken out of the playbook, simplified some things, kind of streamlined it, and focused on what the offensive line is good at. The thing that fascinates me, though, is how creative they've been able to be with the skill players behind this simplified package for the offensive line. I think that's huge. Whether it's the things they're doing to get Ollie downhill faster, the things they're doing with Brennan Presley in pre-snap motion, or what he's doing after the play. We saw them break out a couple of different plays where they actually used Ollie as a decoy. One, he moves out in motion to the right. He gets lined up behind two tight ends, way wide out to the right, at a goal line situation from the 5. And it looks very clear that they're just going to try to throw him the ball and get him behind a couple of blockers and see if he can power his way into the end zone.
Yeah.
Instead, they go the other direction. Jaden Bray scores a 5-yard touchdown. Brennan Presley had a similar thing where he motions into the backfield opposite of Ollie. They run Ollie to the left, end up throwing back to the right, where Brennan makes the guy miss, spins out of another tackle, and goes and scores a touchdown. So the creativity that they're using with all of these guys has been really impressive, and it's something that obviously there's a limit to your creativity, and they've got to keep this going. That's going to be the important part. You can't get stagnant now with what you're doing offensively, and that's, I think, the big test for Casey Dunn and his side of the ball. But what they've done so far these last 3 weeks, Joe, I think has been incredibly impressive. Yeah,
and even more so, and even important moving forward is they lose some depth at wide receiver as well to get Presley in open space and creative situations. He's so dynamic there, and we've already seen if you go back 2 weeks ago to that Kansas game, Ollie Gordon is a pass catcher, so that's kind of gone off and on depending on how well he's run the ball, but he can also catch it out of the backfield and make plays there. So it might not be the most talented offensive team, but they have really figured out kind of what they're working with and maximizing what they have.
Yeah, this fly is driving me nuts. We're gonna get the fly swatter.
We're fighting through it.
Exactly. We're gonna flip over to the defensive side of the ball. You were at the Kansas game in person. You saw them get hit with that game. They had 5 plays that went for over 30 yards. All 5 go for touchdowns. They had similar type of results on Saturday at West Virginia, with a couple of long touchdowns that they gave up, another long one that set up a touchdown. I think I think that a lot of this feels like kind of the learning curve of this new defense, and young guys seeing things for the first time and not being as quick to react as they possibly could. It just feels like a lot of their defensive issues are fixable. It's kind of where I'm going with this, Joe.
Yeah, I still think the strength of this team could be with their defense.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of talent on that side of the ball. We've seen it. We've seen them play really well. Gundy talked a little bit today about at times doing things to sort of protect themselves on the back end.
Right.
But with the pass rush that they can get, that's really the most important part of like modern defenses is getting to the quarterback. They've been able to do that. So I'm not too worried. It's kind of strange that we're even like kind of having this conversation. It's like you can argue you're more worried about the defense than the offense,
right.
when it's like it sure didn't seem that way a couple weeks ago.
Exactly. It felt like this was going to have to be a team that defended well and gave the offense a chance, and now it's looks more like a team that's prepared to go into a shootout and hope that the defense can get enough stops for them to win, which was obviously the case on Saturday. Nick Martin's emergence in this defense, I think, has been one fascinating story that we haven't. We talk a little bit about him on this show, but the guy now has had 2 17 tackle performances this season. This is his first year as a starter. He's up to 71 tackles already for the season. There's only 19 guys in the country averaging at least 10 tackles a game, and he's one of them. This is just a really impressive. It's just been a lot of fun to watch him emerge in this defense, and I know you've got to see him a couple of times now in person, but that linebacker group, when you add Colin Oliver on one side, Xavier Benson, another guy that's playing well and not getting a lot of pub on the other outside spot, but they just have a lot of dynamic athletes in that group, and I think that's going to be one of the keys to pulling this defense along and getting them where they need to be, Joe.
Yeah, obviously Danny Stutzman at Oklahoma gets a ton of attention,
right.
but Nick Martin deserves a lot of attention for what he's done at OSU. Both guys putting up huge tackle numbers and kind of doing it under the radar, like you wrote about after the game. It's like, unless you look at the stat sheet afterward, you kind of have to remind yourself, man, this guy had a bunch of tackles tonight. But yeah, he's a really good player, and he's been kind of one of my biggest surprises. Not as familiar with this team going into the season, just really enjoying watching him play.
Yeah, and one other key to this defense that's been really impressive. Now the 3 previous years, the last 2 years of Jim Knowles, and then last season with Derek Mason, this team was really good on third down. They haven't been as good on third down this year, but they've turned out to be really good on fourth down. They had 2 more big stops, one of them in a real crucial situation near midfield. Kendall Daniels comes up and makes a play after Trey Rucker kind of disrupted the play. As football continues to go more and more toward being willing to go for it on fourth down, that's going to be, I think, something if they can build on that and make themselves a really impactful fourth down defense. That's those are as good as takeaways, in my opinion. Yeah,
I mean they essentially are takeaways when you have a turnover on downs. And I remember after that Arizona State game earlier this year, Mike Gundy said that they practice fourth down defense more, going into the season than any season in his previous tenure at Oklahoma State. And a lot of that is, analytics would tell you that, teams should be going for it more often than they are on fourth down. And a lot of teams are kind of using that as an extra down rather than just punting it away, giving it back to the other team. So, they've practiced it and it's really come through. I mean, just all different fourth down situations. Nardo's talked about that quite a bit. And those are like, they almost have the same like emotional turn as a turnover as well, because it just gets everyone fired up. Like the defense kind of like takes offense to it. Like they're going to go for it on fourth down against us. Like everyone gets fired up. At home the crowd can obviously get behind them. So yeah, that's been impressive because, look at any college football game across the country. Some coaches are kind of getting criticized for going for it too much on fourth down, but I don't think it's going to stop.
No, I don't think so either. I think it's only going to continue to be more impactful. You mentioned crowd. Mike Gundy talked a little bit about the crowd today and the consistency that they've been coming with this year. They've sold out the entire season now at this point. They sold out their season tickets before the season started, which, as far as any OSU researcher can tell, is the first time it's ever happened. And now you've got homecoming, which have you ever been around for an Oklahoma State homecoming?
I have not, but I'm looking forward to it.
It is a fascinating thing. America's greatest homecoming. It's a really big deal here in Stillwater, and with a 7 p.m. game, it's a full day of celebration. Possibly even here at Stone Cloud. I don't know what everybody has planned after the parade, but a lot of fun things to do in Stillwater between the parade and the game. And I feel like we're going to see the Boone Pickens Stadium crowd at peak level this week.
What exactly has gone into the increase in ticket sales and everything and selling out every game? Has it just been like the athletic department and marketing doing a really good job? Or
there's a lot of that. The part that's the hardest to explain is that they were coming off a really disappointing second half of last season.
You would think that it would go in the other direction.
Exactly. It seemed like that would be the case, but this fan base has reacted really strongly to what's coming. I do think spring helped. They were able to sort of explain to the fans and display to the fans that there was a different attitude around this team because of all the new players that had come in. They had really worked quickly to put the way last year ended behind them, and I think that there was an attitude of excitement that was hard to predict. In December, at the end of December, after that bowl game, you didn't feel like this was a program that was going to be able to right itself very quickly, and by March, it was a very different aura around the team. So
especially for sticking with the team through some rough weeks at the beginning of the season, and kind of the fans have stuck with the team with the turnaround, and that probably has people more excited than ever. So it really is impressive, because not every school, even Power 5 schools like that, where they're seeing increased numbers in attendance. Usually it's going in the opposite direction. So I find that pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it absolutely has been, and a real tribute to the fan base for sticking with this program through a tough year. So, all right, with that, was there anything else about Mike Gundy today that you found interesting or wanted to throw out there?
Does he ever bring his dogs around anymore to the press conference?
Every now and then.
Okay.
Every now and then.
He referenced his dogs, though. He said that, talk about kind of the accolades of head coach, but he comes home, his wife's asleep, and the only one that cares about him is his dog. So we at least got a reference to Mike Gundy's dog. So yes. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, they will show up from time to time. They haven't broken in and tried to steal anybody's sandwiches lately on their recent appearances, so we appreciate that. But yeah, always fun to have them around when they can show up. So, all right, with that, I think it's time for the Stone Cloud 6-pack, Joe.
Let's do it.
Your first ever Stone Cloud 6-pack, and since it's your first one, taking it a little bit easy. I don't normally tell Jacob the categories.
Okay.
But I went ahead and told you what we're going to pick today, so you had at least a little bit of time.
I might have already forgotten one or two, but
right.
We'll see.
It's understandable. There are times that I've actually told Jacob the categories, and he still forgets what they are, and has done no preparation at all. But yeah, so we're going to start with the man of the hour, Ollie Gordon. I know this number probably sounds low, and maybe it's too low, but the over-under on Ollie Gordon rushing yards this week, 116.5. There's a couple of reasons I went with that number. Number one, that's what he's actually averaging for the season. Of course, that factors in the first 3 games when he touched the ball, I don't know, maybe 7 times. I forgot what the number is. It's more than 7, but not much more. So, he's averaging over 170 the last 4 games. So factor that in as you wish. But also Cincinnati's defensive line is, as Mike Gundy said, the best that they've played this year. Really talented up there. The clear strength of this team. Mike Gundy made the reference. Like you look at their record, and you go watch this defensive line on film, and you just don't know how this team could be 0-4 in the conference. But they're going through some growing pains as they move into the Big 12. All of that to say, Joe, over or under 116.5 yards for Ollie Gordon on Saturday?
I am hammering the over on this one. I'm going over. It is a really good defensive front that Cincinnati has. Corleone is a really talented player up front for them. They call him the Godfather. And, he's not the only one. Mike Gundy rattled off the numbers of their defensive linemen, as he's prone to do. So, still, though, I think that, especially if if you're thinking an OSU win, you would think that number would have to be over for them to get that done. I mean, just with how much they've ridden him these last couple of weeks. So I will go over that number.
All right, I'm going over as well, which tells me I should have had the number a little bit higher. But anyway,
you're not hammering it.
I'm
though,
not.
like
I'm not hammering it. Here's one thing, and I brought this up to Mike Gundy today. At what point do they start to? He said he's not ready to pull him back yet. But let's say you get up a couple of touchdowns early. Do you start mixing other guys in? Give him a chance to rest some from he went 21 carries, 29 carries, 29 carries the last 3 weeks. Do you give him a chance to get a breather? You've got Bedlam ahead. You should kind of protect him a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I could see it happen. But if this is a close ball game, they'll be willing to pump the ball to Ollie as much as they have to.
Yeah. Game flow, I wasn't really thinking about that, but that's going to have a lot to do with it. If they are able to build a pretty good sized lead and they need to bleed some clock, they can do that with some other backs as well. So that could factor into it, especially with what is going on next week. But, we've seen so many close games in this conference. And with these two teams that, I think they're going to still ride them pretty heavy.
All right, kind of some context for our next one. The over-under number is 3.5, combined total of sacks of Alan Bowman and interceptions thrown by Alan Bowman or whoever the quarterback is. I assume it'll be Bowman all the way. Combined total of sacks and picks over or under 3.5. But following up on what we just talked about, why I've got this number a little bit higher than I probably would have, because they've given up 2 sacks the last 4 games, and I want to say there are 3 interceptions. I didn't look at that stat, so I apologize, but it's in that range. He had 1 on Saturday. The thing that's interesting to me about this, though, with this defensive front, Bowman has been a little bit skittish in the pocket. He'll try to bail a little quick sometimes, or he'll be throwing off his back foot, kind of anticipating the pressure. We've seen him make a couple of poor decisions at times, not a ton, but a few. One was on Saturday that ended up in an interception. So that's why I've got this number a little bit higher, because it feels like they could get to Bowman a little bit more, and whether they're getting to him for sacks or just force him into some bad throws, I feel like that could up this number. So I'm over or under 3.5 sacks and picks for Oklahoma State.
I'm going to go under, but I can see both sides of this one. It's a really well-placed number on your part. One thing that Mike Gundy said today is that they've been able to, take pressure off their offensive line and excel in pass protection because of how well they've run the ball.
Right.
So, you don't want to sell out to get after the quarterback and leave open holes for Ollie Gordon to run through. So that's really helped them out a lot. I'm with you. Alan Bowman clearly, and for good reason, doesn't want to get hit back there. But I think on this bet, that helps because he's really quick to throw away the ball.
Yeah. He is.
So he's going to get rid of it if he feels pressure. So I think this is going to be under, but it's a very well placed number.
All right, I'm going to go over.
Okay.
I do. If the number had been 4.5, I probably stay under. But I think Cincinnati will do enough to get to him just a little bit, get him to that 4 of the combination of the 2. I feel like Bowman's, which Mike Gundy, you didn't get a biological clock reference today, which is an old standby.
Glad I didn't.
For Mike Gundy, but his internal clock for Bowman is ticking a little bit faster than it needs to.
Yeah.
Partially because, listen, they gave up 7 sacks, the Oklahoma State offensive line did, in the first 3 games. And Bowman was under a lot of pressure in a lot of situations. So I think he's still a little bit gun shy up there, and they need him to stand in just a little bit longer on some of these plays. But I think that he's going to feel that pressure coming around him.
Well, yeah, and I'm not saying like this is on his mind, but you just wrote the story about kind of the health issues he's gone through with the collapsed lung, and comes from some of the hard hits he's taken. So I would just have to think subconsciously that's on your mind a little bit. I don't want to project too much here, but I think that goes into it. I mean, he's not the most fleet of foot anyway, but at the same time, heck, all quarterbacks are trying to avoid getting hit, though.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Number 3 in the Stone Cloud six-pack, go back to Nick Martin, who we talked about just a little bit ago. He is averaging 10.5 tackles. He's actually averaging, I think, 10.1 tackles per game. But 10.5 is the number that I came up with. So over or under 10.5 tackles for Nick Martin on Saturday?
I'll go under. I've been so positive through these first two that I feel like I have to balance myself out a little bit. I don't have a great reason for it. So wouldn't surprise me if I'm wrong, but I'll go the slight under with 10.5, you said, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So you can still get into double digits.
Yeah.
Just keep him up.
I'll say he gets 10.
There you go. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and go over. I think it's been really impressive what he's doing at this point in the season. I think we're going to continue to see him racking up tackles because of his sideline to sideline speed, his ability to go make plays, doing things with that. So, all right, with that, this is the point in the show, Joe, where we lose the stick to sports crowd.
Yeah, I'm ready for it.
But because this was your first experience at a Mike Gundy Monday presser, I thought we would draft something along those lines, and the draft will be our favorite Mikes.
Mikes or Michaels.
Or Michaels. Michael's also acceptable. I will accept Michael.
Michaels don't count for less credit here.
No. It's Michael Ray Gundy. That's his name. So Michael is acceptable. And as I've established on this show, I'm an incredibly nice guy. So with that, I will let you have the first pick here in the draft.
Well, with all due respect to Mike Gundy, he's not going to be my first pick here. I am going to go, I'm a basketball guy. I'm going to take an easy one, the slam dunk here, and go with Michael Jordan.
Oh, nice.
So MJ, it's hard to go wrong with him, right?
Right.
Even though I'm a LeBron over Jordan guy. I think that's more generational.
Really?
But
okay.
But I'll still pick MJ here.
All right. And just because I'm curious now.
Yeah.
What is the crux of your LeBron argument over MJ?
I think it simply comes down to growing up and still watching LeBron's career and not really getting that firsthand experience just on the tail end of Jordan, like the Wizards years. But
right.
Not to show my age, but The Last Dance really opened my eyes, and I was like, you know what, maybe it is Jordan, but still, even after The Last Dance, I'm going LeBron here.
Right. It's funny because I've always contended that there would be a bigger debate about this if Wilt Chamberlain and Michael Jordan's career had been a little closer together.
Yeah.
Where like dads and their kids had come up similarly, the way that people with MJ and LeBron came up. So
it's hard to compare. I mean, when they're not playing against each other, but I really don't like that debate, to be honest. I mean, they're both great,
right,
and two of the best to ever do it. But anyway, this isn't the LeBron draft; it's
the
Michael draft.
That's right.
The
Mikes. And so with that, with my first pick, I'm going a little bit kind of outside the box here, and there's a reason for it that I'll get into. But I'm going with Mike Tyson. I could probably name a lot of Mikes that I like better.
Yeah.
But he's one that I've always been incredibly fascinated with, going all the way back to just watching him emerge as I was a kid. Like back then, like boxing was on like regular TV. It was like HBO or Showtime or whatever. But we had that at that time, and I got to watch him fight on TV. And then Mike Tyson's Punch-Out came out on Nintendo, and it was one of the greatest video games ever made. And then obviously everything else that went on and both good and bad in his life was beyond fascinating. But the reason that he was particularly on my mind for this draft was that on the flight to Pittsburgh for the West Virginia game, I watched Big George Foreman, the George Foreman movie. And Mike Tyson does not appear in it. Evander Holyfield does. Mike Tyson not in it. But I had boxing on my mind, and so when I started thinking about Mike's, he was one of the first ones that came to my mind. My brother and I still go back and have conversations about how to beat all the different boxers in Punch-Out. King Hippo and the Great Tiger and all of those guys. So that's why that's been on my mind a lot lately. And so he is, for that reason, my first pick in the draft, Joe.
That's a good one.
All right.
That's a good one.
Number 2 to you.
Are you a Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul guy?
I wouldn't go as far as to call myself a guy.
Okay.
I'm aware of the shows.
Okay.
I've watched multiple episodes of both.
Okay.
I haven't watched all the way through.
Well, for anyone who is, I'm a big Breaking Bad fan. Mike Ehrmantraut, not a main character, but still plays a pivotal role in both of those series.
Right.
I think he is one of the most likable, despite his flaws, character on the show. And I thought, since I went so mainstream with my first pick, I ought to go a little more niche with my second pick.
All right. Very good. I like that. I like that a lot. That's fun. We talk a lot of TV on this show.
Fictional mics are allowed. I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. No doubt about it. Definitely right there. All right. With that, I'm gonna go to my second pick. I'm going to the music side of things.
Okay.
I'm going with Michael Jackson. Another one that, like Mike Tyson, had some questionable behavior in his life.
We're just focusing on the artist.
Exactly.
Right?
That's exactly right. When I think about impactful people from my youth in terms of the pop culture world, he was the king of pop. But I remember when he performed at the Super Bowl halftime show. There were like all of these things. I remember how terrified I was the first time I saw the Thriller video, and can still kind of channel that back every now and then when I see anybody. It doesn't even have to be the actual video, just anybody doing this dance.
You know exactly what it is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It triggers me a little bit. Growing up, watching his whole career develop. Well, not his whole career, because I don't really remember the the Jackson 5 days or any of that. I'm not that old.
Yeah.
Even though I did just have a birthday.
You did just have a birthday. Happy
but
belated birthday.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I went up to, when I was working in Kentucky, went up to Gary, Indiana for a story, and that's where the Jackson family is from, and there was a big mural there and everything, so it was pretty cool, kind of history lesson there. So
very nice.
Yeah.
All right, with that, it's time for your third and final selection, Joe.
My third and final selection, I'm going to the pool, and I'm selecting Michael Phelps.
Ooh, that's a good one.
With my last pick, just one of the most exciting Olympians of my lifetime. Certainly watching him rack up all those gold medals and even the team medals with the relay. I'll go with Michael Phelps.
All right, nothing wrong with that at all. All right, with my final pick, I realize what this says about me, that I'm picking another guy who has had some questionable behavior in his life, but this all ties back to Seinfeld, which is my favorite TV show, which is well established here on the pod. I'm going with Michael Richards, who of course plays Kramer on Seinfeld. I've watched some of the stuff, like early things that he did in his career. A hilarious character actor and physical comedian, and obviously the things that he did really made that show. I've established that George, I think, is the linchpin of the show, and you can argue that Elaine is sort of that way as well. If you can have two linchpins, I don't know if that's like allowed.
I think
or not.
You can.
Okay.
Yeah. This is your podcast.
That's right. That's exactly right. It is. And so in order of importance, Kramer probably comes in fourth.
Yeah.
But really. I don't think the show is what it is without him. So
I like our list. It's a very eclectic list.
It really is. Yeah.
We've got athletes. We've got some characters of all sorts.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
So that was fun.
That was good stuff. All right. Well, with that, we will remind you, if you're watching on YouTube, to go drop your score prediction in the comments so that you can win a beer that we'll drink for you next week, and go subscribe to the Oklahoma State Cowboys newsletter on Oklahoman.com, and stick with us. We will have a regular postgame podcast back this week, and also we'll be back here at Stone Cloud next Monday to preview Bedlam. So thank you for listening and watching To the Cowboy Podcast.